Hi there, I'm Katie, and I'm 28 years old. I used to believe in storybook endings, the kind where true love conquers all. My life with the man I thought I'd marry, David, felt like a scene straight out of a romantic movie. Simple joys, shared laughter, and dreams whispered under starlit skies. We pictured a quaint home, maybe a dog, a future built on nothing but our devotion. But life, as I painfully learned, rarely follows the script we write for it. What I once held as my most cherished hope became the very instrument of my deepest heartbreak. It was a wound inflicted by those who deemed me unworthy, setting a chain of events into motion that would change everything. Before we delve into the heart of this tale, I'd love for you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share where you're joining us from today. Your support means the world to me, and it helps the story reach others who might need to hear it. Now, let's go back to where it all began, to a time when my world felt perfectly intact. Our story, David's and mine, began in the vibrant chaos of our university campus. He was the kind of person who effortlessly lit up every room he entered, charismatic, outgoing, with a laugh that could make you forget your worries. I, on the other hand, was always more reserved, a quiet observer with my nose buried in textbooks or code, focused intently on my studies and the personal projects that fueled my curiosity. We were, in many ways, opposites, yet that seemed to be precisely what drew us together. He found my quiet determination intriguing, and I was utterly captivated by his boundless energy and genuine warmth. Our first few dates were a whirlwind of shared dreams and late-night conversations that stretched into the early hours, revealing layers of understanding I hadn't known existed. We talked about everything from our favorite sci-fi movies to our aspirations for the future, building a foundation of connection that felt utterly unbreakable. Those initial years were a period of pure euphoria, a time when our love felt like an invincible force. We spent countless hours envisioning our shared future, mapping out a life together with an almost childlike certainty. David would often look at me, his eyes earnest and full of devotion, and declare, "Katie, you are the only woman I could ever imagine building a life with. You're it for me." His words were a constant reassurance, etching themselves into my heart as promises I never doubted. We pictured a modest yet cozy home, perhaps a garden in the backyard, and the simple joy of growing old together, our hands intertwined. Our bond deepened with every passing season, woven with threads of unwavering trust and a profound sense of belonging. It was a golden age, bathed in the glow of youthful optimism and the absolute conviction that our love was destined to last forever, untouched by the complexities of the outside world. Then came the inevitable introduction to his family, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. The first meeting at their sprawling suburban home began with an air of polite warmth. Mrs. Harrison, with her perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, greeted me with a polite hug. Mr. Harrison, a man of imposing stature and an equally imposing presence, offered a firm handshake. They seemed welcoming enough, asking about my family and my studies. My parents were both dedicated educators, living comfortably but certainly not within the same circles as the Harrisons, who clearly moved in an elite social stratum. As the initial pleasantries faded, however, a subtle shift occurred. Their questions, initially framed as casual interest, began to carry an undertone of subtle evaluation, a silent assessment of my background and perceived social standing. They would make veiled remarks about the expectations they held for their only son, David, often emphasizing the importance of legacy and position. It was like being gently weighed on an invisible scale, and I could feel myself, a simple girl from a middle-class family, coming up just a little short in their estimation. Unbeknownst to David or anyone else in my immediate circle, I had been nurturing a quiet ambition, a personal project that served as both a passion and an escape. Even during my university days, my true fascination lay in the intricate world of information technology, particularly the nascent field of artificial intelligence applied to data analytics. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a burgeoning idea, a vision for how intelligent systems could revolutionize problem solving. I started this endeavor in secrecy, coding late into the night, poring over research papers, and meticulously developing preliminary algorithms. This nascent company, which I quietly named Nexus Innovations, was my sanctuary. I regarded it as a small, personal venture, a space where my intellect could roam freely and my creativity could flourish unhindered. At that point, the thought of it evolving into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise was far from my mind. It was simply a deeply fulfilling pursuit, a quiet rebellion against the mundane, a realm where I felt completely in control and truly alive. As months turned into a year, the subtle hints from David's parents began to sharpen, transforming our family dinners into increasingly tense affairs. Mrs. Harrison, her voice always laced with an unsettling sweetness, developed a habit of probing my professional aspirations, my financial prospects, and my future plans, with an intensity that felt less like maternal concern and more like an interrogation. She would ask about my career trajectory, her eyes scanning my face for any hint of grand ambition, and then sigh delicately when my answers didn't align with her unspoken expectations. Mr. Harrison, on the other hand, preferred to lecture, his booming voice filling the dining room as he expounded upon the standards and caliber required of any future member of their esteemed family. He would casually, yet pointedly, drop names of daughters from prominent families, women with established legacies, or powerful political connections, drawing explicit comparisons that left me feeling utterly inadequate and out of place. Each comparison was a thinly veiled suggestion that I simply didn't measure up to the illustrious women they envisioned for their son. David, bless his heart, initially attempted to deflect his parents' barbed comments, offering a weak defense of my character or changing the subject. But over time, the relentless pressure began to wear him down. He grew increasingly quiet during these exchanges, his eyes darting between his parents and me, a silent apology etched in their depths that never quite found its way into words. The vibrant man I knew seemed to shrink under the weight of their disapproval, replaced by a subdued version of himself. I watched, heartbroken, as his spirit seemed to dim, and an insidious sense of loneliness began to creep into my own heart. It was a gnawing feeling, a realization that the solid ground I thought we stood on was starting to crumble, piece by agonizing piece. The insidious whispers of their disapproval were slowly, surely, eroding the very foundation of our once unshakable love, leaving me feeling increasingly isolated in a relationship I thought was impervious to outside influence. The true turning point, the moment when the insidious whispers became a deafening roar, occurred one evening after a strained gathering with David's extended relatives. Mrs. Harrison cornered me in the hallway, her smile replaced by a look of steely resolve. "Katie," she began, her voice low but piercing, "we need to be frank. You simply aren't suitable to be our daughter-in-law. You lack the necessary material for the kind of future we envision for David. You don't possess the temperament or the connections of a future madam that our son deserves." Her words landed like a physical blow, a sharp, cold blade twisting in my chest. I felt a flush of humiliation rise to my cheeks, my breath catching in my throat. I tried desperately to maintain my composure, to nod politely and retreat, but inside, a raw wound had just been opened. The sheer audacity of her statement, delivered with such unapologetic conviction, left me reeling. As I stumbled away, my vision blurred by unshed tears, I caught David's gaze across the crowded room. His eyes were filled with a pained sympathy, a flicker of regret, but he remained utterly silent. He didn't come to my defense. He didn't challenge his mother's cruel pronouncement. In that agonizing moment, I truly understood the gravity of our situation. It wasn't just a difference of opinion. It was a fundamental rejection, a declaration that I was, in their eyes, simply not enough. The reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about their lofty expectations anymore. This was personal. This was about my worth, or rather, their perceived lack of it. The relentless pressure from David's parents intensified with each passing day, escalating from veiled criticisms to overt disapproval. Our once private moments were no longer safe from their scrutiny. They began openly lambasting me in front of David, casting insidious doubts about the uncertain future he would face if he remained by my side. Mrs. Harrison, her voice sharper now, would lament about my lack of ambition for a woman her son's partner should be, painting a picture of me as an anchor dragging him down. Mr. Harrison would chime in, emphasizing that David's potential was being squandered on a relationship that offered no tangible benefits, no strategic alliances, no grand societal ascent. They painted a bleak image of a life with me, devoid of the sparkle and influence they craved. These public condemnations were not just hurtful, they were calculated maneuvers designed to erode David's confidence in our relationship and to systematically dismantle my own self-worth. It was a suffocating atmosphere, one where every shared meal, every family gathering became a battleground for my dignity. Beyond the dinner table, their campaign continued through relentless digital and telephonic bombardment. David's phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from his parents, each message a fresh wave of guilt and manipulation. They demanded that he reconsider our relationship, barraging him with scenarios of how much more successful he could be without me. I would sometimes catch glimpses of these messages, long, rambling paragraphs filled with emotional blackmail and thinly veiled threats about disinheritance or losing their support. They portrayed me as a fundamental obstacle to his upward mobility, a drain on his future prospects. The constant barrage chipped away at his resolve, turning his once vibrant spirit into a weary submission. This relentless psychological warfare left me feeling utterly helpless, watching from the sidelines as the man I loved was slowly, systematically being torn away from me by the relentless machinations of his own family. It felt like an invisible, suffocating net, slowly tightening around our once unbreakable bond, leaving me gasping for air. To add insult to injury, the Harrisons began orchestrating strategic encounters for David with other women, individuals they deemed suitable matches for their son's illustrious future. These were not casual introductions. They were meticulously planned social engagements, charity galas, exclusive club functions, and private dinners, all designed to parade a selection of carefully vetted candidates before David. Each woman possessed the pedigree and connections that I supposedly lacked, daughters of prominent business figures, influential politicians, or old money philanthropists. The knowledge of these orchestrated meetings was a constant, sharp thorn in my side. Each time David left for one of these events, feigning a business commitment or a friend's gathering, a fresh wave of humiliation washed over me. The very idea that they were actively shopping for my replacement, that my love could be so easily dismissed and discarded, was an agonizing assault on my dignity. I felt not just heartbroken, but publicly shamed, as if my very existence was a mere obstacle to their grand designs. It was during this period that the whispers of a new, formidable rival began to circulate through the social circles David's parents frequented. Her name was Eleanor, a woman whose very name seemed to carry the weight of immense power and prestige. She was introduced in hushed tones as the daughter of a hugely influential figure in the nation's political landscape, a person whose sway within the government was undeniable, though never explicitly named as the president, to avoid straying into the realm of implausibility. Eleanor herself was a striking figure, possessing a timeless beauty, sharp intellect, and an undeniable aura of authority that commanded attention. She moved with an inherent grace, her every gesture exuding confidence and a quiet power. Her lineage alone would have been enough to turn heads, but she also held advanced degrees from Ivy League institutions, commanded respect in her own burgeoning philanthropic endeavors, and was a constant fixture in high society magazines and news segments. Her reputation preceded her, painted in vivid strokes of privilege, accomplishment, and an almost regal poise. She was, in every conceivable way, the antithesis of everything the Harrisons believed I represented, and the very embodiment of their aspirational ideal for David's partner. David's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, regarded Eleanor's emergence as nothing less than a divine intervention, a golden opportunity to catapult their son, and by extension their entire family, into the stratosphere of power and social standing. Their eyes gleamed with a predatory ambition as they devised a meticulous strategy to facilitate David's connection with Eleanor. They relentlessly orchestrated chance encounters at exclusive events, ensuring David was always positioned to cross paths with her. Invitations to exclusive political fundraisers, private club galas, and elite charity functions magically appeared, all designed to showcase David in the most flattering light while allowing him ample opportunity to engage with Eleanor. They were like master puppeteers, subtly pulling strings behind the scenes, leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of this advantageous alliance. Their every action was a testament to their calculating minds, their unwavering focus on elevating their social and political standing through their son's carefully chosen marriage. The change in David, once subtle, became increasingly stark and undeniable. Initially, he seemed torn, a flicker of his old self visible in his hesitations and conflicted glances. He would offer mumbled excuses about his parents' insistence, promising that our love would endure. But under the constant, suffocating pressure from his parents, combined with the glittering allure of a future steeped in power, position, and undeniable prestige, his resistance began to crumble. The promise of a brilliant career, a guaranteed ascent into the upper echelons of society, proved too tempting to resist. His attitude towards me, once warm and unwavering, grew progressively colder, more distant. Our once frequent phone calls dwindled, replaced by curt texts or unanswered messages. He spent less and less time with me, always citing a growing list of important commitments that conveniently overlapped with our usual dates. His explanations grew thinner, more evasive, until they became almost non-existent. The man I loved was slowly, agonizingly slipping away, lured by the siren song of ambition and the relentless whispers of his parents. He was no longer the passionate, devoted partner I knew, but a hollowed-out version, consumed by a newfound coldness that pierced me to my core. My internal world, once vibrant with shared dreams, began to crack under the strain. Initially, I clung to a fragile thread of hope, desperately trying to salvage what was left of our relationship. I would initiate conversations, asking David why he was pulling away, trying to understand the sudden chasm that had opened between us. Each attempt was met with vague assurances or irritable silences, leaving me feeling increasingly helpless and unheard. I found myself replaying every interaction, searching for clues, for a reason, for anything that could explain his sudden detachment. The gnawing suspicion that I was losing him, little by agonizing little, became a constant companion, a heavy weight in my chest that made every breath feel labored. My mind became a relentless loop of questions, each one sharper than the last. Had I done something wrong? Was I truly not enough? The uncertainty was a torment worse than any outright rejection, as it kept me trapped in a purgatory of doubt and despair, clinging to a love that was visibly slipping through my fingers. As the futility of my desperate attempts became brutally clear, a profound sense of disappointment and a crushing despondency settled over me. The realization that my efforts to salvage our relationship were pointless, that David had already made his choice, plunged me into a deep abyss of emotional turmoil. Sleep became a luxury I rarely afforded, haunted by restless nights filled with anxious thoughts and the phantom ache of a love lost. My appetite vanished, and I watched helplessly as my body grew thinner, a physical manifestation of the emotional toll I was enduring. The pervasive sense of betrayal, the crushing indignity of being deemed unworthy by his parents, weighed down on me like an oppressive shroud. I felt cheapened, discarded, as if my worth could be so easily dismissed and replaced by a more suitable option. The heartbreak was a physical agony, a dull ache that never subsided, a constant reminder of the gaping void David had left behind. Each morning brought with it a renewed wave of despair, the reality of my broken dreams crashing over me like relentless waves, threatening to drag me under entirely. Yet, amidst this profound anguish, a surprising lifeline emerged from the depths of my despair: Nexus Innovations. In my darkest moments, when the pain felt unbearable and the world seemed to shrink around me, I found an unexpected sanctuary in the work I had so quietly cultivated. It became a refuge, a space where my intellect could flourish unburdened by emotional turmoil. I poured every ounce of my wounded energy, every shred of my fractured focus into building this nascent company. The pain, once a suffocating weight, transformed into a potent, raw fuel that drove me forward. I worked with a single-minded intensity, often losing track of time, forgoing meals and sleep, until the small, cramped office I rented became a literal extension of myself, a fortress against the outside world. I discovered that the act of creating something tangible, something valuable from the ground up, offered an unparalleled sense of control and purpose, a stark contrast to the chaotic helplessness that defined my personal life. It was a silent, defiant act of rebuilding, transforming raw heartache into productive energy, a testament to the resilience I didn't know I possessed until it was truly tested. My small, obscure startup became more than just a project. It became my lifeline, a beacon of hope in the overwhelming darkness, providing me with a sense of self-worth that had been so cruelly stripped away. The suffocating silence that had grown between David and me became unbearable. I knew, deep down, that prolonging the agony was only delaying the inevitable. One rain-swept afternoon, with the sky mirroring the storm brewing inside me, I decided to face him. I called him, my voice trembling slightly as I asked him to meet me at our old coffee shop, the one where we'd spent countless hours dreaming aloud. He agreed, his tone unusually subdued. When he arrived, his eyes avoided mine, fixing instead on the steam rising from his mug. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "David," I began, my voice barely a whisper, "we need to talk. Really talk. What's happening between us?" I laid bare my heart, speaking of the cherished dreams we'd built together. The cozy home, the laughter, the quiet future we'd meticulously planned. I reminded him of his unwavering promises, the declarations of eternal love he'd so often whispered. "Do you remember when you said I was the only woman you'd ever want to marry?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "Was that just a lie, David? Was everything we shared just a convenient fiction?" I pleaded with him, not just for answers, but for the clarity of a choice, a definitive direction for our fractured relationship. I needed him to look at me, truly look at me, and make a stand for what he claimed to believe in. His response when it finally came was a slow, agonizing confession delivered with a detached air that chilled me to the bone. He admitted, in a voice devoid of genuine emotion, that his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, had indeed orchestrated the entire scheme. He recounted their relentless pressure, the constant phone calls and thinly veiled threats, the promises of a glittering future tied to a suitable alliance. "I can't defy them, Katie," he stated, his gaze still fixed on the table, not meeting my tear-filled eyes. "You just don't understand the immense pressure I'm under, the expectations that come with my family's name." He spoke of duty, of legacy, of a path laid out for him that he felt powerless to deviate from. His words were cloaked in a chilling veneer of kindness, a cold rationale for his abandonment. He claimed that this separation was for the best, for both our futures, insisting that I deserved someone better, someone who could truly understand my world, whatever that meant. There was not a trace of genuine regret in his eyes, no sign of the profound pain that usually accompanies such a monumental decision. His voice remained unnervingly even, utterly devoid of the usual tremors of a breaking heart. It was as if he were reciting lines from a script, a pre-rehearsed justification to sever ties with minimal emotional cost to himself. The man I knew, the man who had once sworn his undying love, had been utterly consumed by the ambitions of his parents, leaving behind only a hollow shell of his former self, a stranger sitting across from me, delivering my sentence with an almost clinical detachment. The finality of his words hung heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. He uttered the dreaded phrase, "It's over, Katie," with a chilling clarity, his voice steady, devoid of the slightest tremor of hesitation or lingering affection. His eyes, once so full of warmth and adoration, were now cold and distant, utterly devoid of the love that had once shone so brightly. There was no flicker of sorrow, no hint of regret, only a flat, almost impatient blankness, perhaps even a subtle flicker of annoyance that I was making this difficult for him. It was as if I was merely a logistical problem, an inconvenient obstacle to be removed from his carefully constructed path forward. That gaze, so empty of tenderness, was perhaps the most agonizing part of the entire ordeal, more painful than any shouted accusation or desperate plea. It stripped away every last vestige of shared history, every whispered promise, every intimate moment we had ever known. In that single, unfeeling look, I saw the complete annihilation of our future, of everything I had poured my heart into. And just like that, David vanished from my life as swiftly and completely as a ghost. There was no lingering goodbye, no final embrace, not even a backward glance. He simply walked out of that coffee shop, out of my apartment, and out of my existence without a single look back, leaving behind a silence that screamed louder than any argument. My phone, once filled with his affectionate texts and late-night calls, remained eerily silent. No calls came, no messages appeared, no lingering digital breadcrumbs to suggest that I had ever even existed in his world. It was as if I had been erased, a non-entity, a forgotten dream. The sensation of being callously discarded, replaced without a second thought, was an unspeakable cruelty. I felt like a broken toy, carelessly cast aside for a newer, shinier model. The love I had nurtured, the future I had envisioned, shattered into a million pieces, leaving me adrift in a sea of abandonment, utterly alone and utterly lost. The casualness of his departure, the complete absence of any acknowledgement of our history, was a wound that festered, a constant reminder of how little I had truly meant to him in the end. Just a few short weeks after David's brutal departure, the news of his engagement to Eleanor, the influential figure's daughter, erupted across every media platform. Their smiling faces, plastered across the front pages of newspapers and flashing across every television screen, mocked me relentlessly. The glossy magazine covers showcased them as the perfect couple, a testament to power and privilege. I saw David, dressed impeccably, his arm around Eleanor, a radiant, almost triumphant smile gracing his lips, the very same smile he used to reserve only for me. Each photograph was 1,000 tiny daggers, piercing my already shattered heart. It was a cruel public display of the future that was supposed to be mine, now brazenly stolen and paraded before the world. The sheer brazenness of their public happiness, so soon after my world had crumbled, felt like a deliberate act of further humiliation, rubbing salt into an open wound. And there, standing proudly beside the newly engaged couple, were Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, beaming with unconcealed satisfaction. Their faces, usually etched with a refined restraint, were now openly radiating pride and smug contentment. Their smiles were wide, their eyes gleaming with an almost predatory triumph. They had achieved their grand design, securing the social and political ascension they had so relentlessly craved for their son. The image of their unbridled joy, a direct consequence of my heartbreak, was almost unbearable to witness. It was a tangible representation of their victory, a clear sign that they had gotten precisely what they wanted, regardless of the emotional wreckage left in their wake. They didn't just win. They reveled in it, cementing their newfound status with every proud glance and every celebratory gesture. This public spectacle was the ultimate culmination of betrayal, a public shaming that seared itself into my memory. It wasn't just the loss of David. It was the brutal realization that I had been reduced to a mere stepping stone, an easily disposable variable in their meticulously calculated equation for power and prestige. I had not only lost the man I loved, the future I so desperately desired, but I had also lost something far more profound: my unwavering faith in love itself. The very foundation of my belief in promises, in sincerity, in the enduring power of connection, crumbled into dust. And perhaps most painfully, I lost a piece of my self-worth. If I could be so easily replaced, so carelessly discarded, then what truly was my value? The question gnawed at me, stripping away any lingering sense of security or inherent worth. This wasn't merely heartbreak. It was an existential crisis, a complete dismantling of my understanding of loyalty, trust, and even my own identity. The world blurred around me, a chaotic symphony of pain. I collapsed onto my apartment floor, the silence of the empty rooms suddenly unbearable. A raw, guttural scream tore from my throat, a sound of pure agony and despair. Tears streamed down my face, hot and relentless, blurring my vision as I stumbled around, blindly striking at anything within reach. A lamp crashed, scattering shards of glass across the wooden floor. A framed photograph of David and me, taken during happier times, flew across the room, shattering against the wall, its broken pieces mirroring the fragments of my heart. I clawed at my chest, as if trying to rip out the searing pain that consumed me. The suffocating weight of helplessness, the crushing grip of utter desperation, pressed in on me from all sides. A tidal wave of white-hot anger surged through my veins, a furious rage at David, at his parents, at the injustice of it all. Why wasn't I good enough? I shrieked into the empty air, my voice hoarse from crying. Why was my love so worthless to him? Each question echoed in the oppressive silence, amplifying my torment. This was it. This was the absolute nadir, the rock bottom of my pain, where every shred of hope, every flicker of light, seemed to have been extinguished. I lay there for hours, broken and weeping, feeling utterly consumed by the darkness. After the initial, soul-crushing storm of despair subsided, leaving behind a desolate landscape of broken dreams, a flicker of something new began to ignite within me. The agony, once so consuming, gradually transmuted into a hardened resolve, a steely determination that settled deep in my core. I recognized, with a chilling clarity, that I could not afford to wallow any longer. To remain submerged in sorrow would be to grant David and his family a final, devastating victory. The pain, instead of crushing me, began to forge a new kind of strength, transforming itself into a formidable armor. I swore to myself, with a fierce, unwavering vow, that I would never again allow anyone to diminish my worth, to dictate my value, or to disrespect my existence. My worth, I fiercely decided, would be defined by my own actions, my own achievements, and the unwavering belief in my own potential. This was not about revenge. It was about reclamation. It was about rebuilding myself, brick by painful brick, into something unbreakable. With this newfound, almost brutal resolve, I poured every fiber of my being into Nexus Innovations. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the profound sense of betrayal, all of it became raw, potent fuel for my relentless drive. I worked with a fervent, almost maniacal intensity, transforming my grief into productive energy. My small, once cozy apartment, filled with too many painful memories, felt suffocating. I quickly moved into a smaller, more Spartan dwelling, shedding every unnecessary expense, every comfort that could distract me from my singular mission. Every dollar saved, every penny earned from consulting gigs, was meticulously reinvested into the nascent company. It was a period of extreme austerity, but I embraced it, seeing each sacrifice as a vital step towards my ultimate, undefined goal. The world outside faded into a blurry backdrop. My universe narrowed to the glowing screens, the lines of code, and the intricate algorithms that pulsed with life under my fingertips. Those days stretched into weeks, then months, a continuous blur of relentless work, obsessive research, and feverish coding. I lived and breathed Nexus Innovations, existing on minimal sleep and hurried meals, driven by an unyielding inner fire. The initial team was small, composed of a handful of old university friends whom I trusted implicitly, talented individuals who shared my passion for innovation, but knew little of the personal turmoil that fueled my relentless pace. I maintained a strict veil of secrecy around the true scale and immense potential of Nexus Innovations. To them and to the world, it was simply a small tech startup, another ambitious venture in a crowded landscape. This deliberate understatement allowed me to operate under the radar, away from the prying eyes of competitors, and, more importantly, away from the scrutiny of David's world. My small office, cluttered with whiteboards, covered in complex equations and discarded coffee cups, transformed into my hermetic sanctuary, a place where I could channel all my pain and frustration into tangible creation. It was a space where I could lose myself in the elegant logic of code, finding a profound sense of purpose and control that was conspicuously absent in my shattered personal life. Here, amidst the hum of servers and the glow of monitors, I was not the discarded ex-girlfriend. I was a builder, a creator, a force of my own making. The path was far from smooth. It was riddled with unforeseen obstacles and disheartening setbacks. There were moments of crippling financial strain when securing the next round of funding felt like an impossible task, when every penny counted and the fear of failure loomed large. Technical glitches, complex coding challenges, and the daunting task of navigating a fiercely competitive market often pushed me to the brink of exhaustion. I endured countless sleepless nights, hunched over my keyboard, debugging intricate lines of code, grappling with algorithms that stubbornly refused to cooperate. There were instances where the sheer magnitude of the task, the crushing weight of responsibility, made me want to simply give up, to throw in the towel and surrender to the pervasive weariness. But in those darkest hours, when the thought of quitting gnawed at my resolve, two potent images would flash before my eyes. David's indifferent face as he walked away, and his mother's cutting words about my unsuitability. Those memories, sharp and painful, were an unexpected yet incredibly powerful fuel. They reminded me of the profound injustice I had suffered, and rekindled the unwavering determination to prove them wrong, not just to them, but to myself. This pain, This burning memory of humiliation became the ultimate catalyst, pushing me onward, ensuring that I would not just survive, but truly thrive. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Nexus Innovations began to gain traction, a quiet hum turning into a discernible buzz within its niche market. Our innovative products, meticulously crafted and rigorously tested, started to resonate with early adopters. We secured our first clients, modest contracts initially, then gradually larger, more significant deals. The momentum was building, but I remained fiercely committed to maintaining a low profile. I avoided media spotlights, declined interviews, and actively discouraged any public fanfare. My strategy was clear. Nexus Innovations would grow organically, its reputation built solely on the intrinsic value and groundbreaking nature of its technology, not on any personal fame or the fleeting allure of celebrity. I wanted the company's success to be a testament to hard work, ingenuity, and genuine merit, completely detached from any personal narrative or the superficiality of public perception. This deliberate stealth mode allowed us to innovate freely, making mistakes and learning from them away from critical eyes, ensuring that our growth was robust and sustainable, built on a foundation of solid achievement rather than transient hype. During this intense period of development, I began to forge new connections, meeting individuals who would become integral to Nexus Innovations' rapid ascent and to my personal healing. I encountered several visionary partners and astute angel investors who saw beyond my quiet demeanor and my relatively humble origins. Unlike David's parents, these individuals were utterly unconcerned with my personal background or social connections. Their focus was solely on the raw potential of my ideas, the undeniable power of Nexus Innovations technology, and my unwavering commitment to its success. They placed their trust in my vision, investing not just capital, but also invaluable mentorship and unwavering belief. These were the true allies, the people who stood by me through the arduous initial phases, offering guidance and support when the road ahead seemed steepest. I remain eternally grateful for their faith in me, for their ability to see the true value that lay beneath the surface, unaffected by any external judgments or societal prejudices. Among these crucial new companions was a particularly insightful investor named Ethan, a man whose foresight and keen understanding of the tech landscape were truly remarkable. Ethan wasn't just a source of capital. He was a true visionary who saw the future of artificial intelligence with a clarity that few others possessed. He placed an extraordinary amount of faith in me, a young woman still navigating the emotional aftermath of a profound betrayal, yet utterly consumed by an audacious dream. He became more than just an investor. He evolved into a trusted mentor, a sounding board for my most ambitious ideas, and a wise counsel during moments of uncertainty. His belief in Nexus Innovations, and more importantly, in me, was unwavering. He often reminded me that true innovation stemmed from passion and perseverance, not from privilege or preordained paths. Ethan's guidance was instrumental in shaping Nexus Innovations into the powerhouse it would become, and his quiet confidence in my abilities helped me rediscover a belief in myself that had been brutally shattered. His partnership was a cornerstone of my success, a constant reminder that genuine support is built on mutual respect and shared vision, not superficial status. With each passing quarter, Nexus Innovations experienced exponential growth, a silent, unstoppable surge that defied industry norms. Our proprietary technology, built on groundbreaking advancements in predictive analytics and machine learning, proved to be nothing short of revolutionary. It solved complex problems for businesses across diverse sectors, streamlining operations, enhancing efficiency, and unlocking unprecedented levels of insight. From a humble startup operating out of a small, rented space, Nexus Innovations transformed into an undeniable, silent force within the technology industry. Its market valuation soared at an astonishing rate, escalating from millions to hundreds of millions, and then swiftly into the billions of dollars. I, as the sole founder and primary stakeholder, retained the vast majority of the company's shares, ensuring that my vision and control remained absolute. Crucially, my identity as the mastermind behind this $9 billion empire remained a fiercely guarded secret, shrouded in an almost impenetrable veil of anonymity. I meticulously built a robust and incredibly efficient management structure, handpicking a team of exceptionally talented and fiercely loyal individuals. These were not just employees. They were dedicated professionals who shared my commitment to innovation and excellence, driven by merit and a shared purpose. I delegated operational responsibilities to them, trusting their expertise implicitly, which allowed me to focus my energy on orchestrating the grand strategic decisions, ensuring Nexus innovations stayed ahead of the curve and continued to disrupt the market. My role became one of visionary leadership, steering the company toward its ambitious goals, relentlessly pursuing new frontiers in technological advancement. This success, this immense empire I had painstakingly constructed, was never about vengeance. It was a tangible testament to my innate capabilities, a resounding validation of my worth that transcended any external judgment. It was the purest form of self-affirmation, a declaration that my intellectual prowess and unwavering perseverance were more than enough. This was the ultimate freedom I had meticulously carved out for myself, a liberation from the constraints of others, expectations, a profound triumph of spirit achieved quietly, deliberately, and with an undeniable, fierce grace. For a significant period following their wedding, David and Eleanor, and by extension, the entire Harrison family, basked in the dazzling glow of newfound prominence and power. The marriage itself had been a grand, televised affair, a spectacle of wealth and influence that captivated the nation. Mr. Harrison, David's father, leveraged the connection to Eleanor's family to secure significant advancements in his own political and business circles. Doors that were once merely ajar now swung wide open, offering unprecedented opportunities. The family's primary business, a venerable, albeit somewhat stagnant, manufacturing firm that specialized in traditional industrial components, initially experienced a surge in lucrative government contracts and high-profile partnerships, all courtesy of the powerful new alliances forged through the union. The Harrisons, once merely wealthy, now found themselves rubbing shoulders with the true elite, their social standing elevated to heights they had only dreamed of. They relished their enhanced prestige, their names appearing in society columns and financial news alongside the most influential figures in the country. It appeared at first glance that their calculated gamble had paid off handsomely, securing David's future and solidifying their family's place in the upper echelons of power. However, the glossy facade of their success masked a deeper, more insidious truth. David's own professional trajectory, despite the immense advantages bestowed upon him by his marriage, proved to be fundamentally unstable. He had been propelled into high-profile positions within his family's enterprise, and even given a token role in some of Eleanor's family's charitable ventures. But these were largely ceremonial. He lacked the innate competence, the strategic foresight, and the genuine leadership skills required to sustain true organic growth. His achievements were built entirely on the shaky foundation of inherited connections and political favors, rather than on any inherent talent or diligent effort. He struggled to adapt to evolving market dynamics, consistently demonstrating a profound inability to make independent, sound business decisions. While he initially enjoyed the superficial perks of his new status, the weight of real responsibility proved too much for him. His career, a hollow shell of what his parents had envisioned, began to show cracks, revealing a man who was more comfortable riding on coattails than forging his own path. Meanwhile, behind the tightly drawn curtains of their opulent mansion, David and Eleanor's marital bliss was, in reality, a fragile illusion. Eleanor, a woman of formidable intellect and fierce independence, possessed a will of her own, one that clashed relentlessly with the rigid expectations of her in-laws. She was not the docile, compliant wife the Harrisons had envisioned for their son. She had her own career ambitions, her own opinions, and a powerful family of her own to back her. Their disagreements were frequent and often volatile, ranging from minor domestic squabbles to fundamental clashes over life choices and public appearances. The tension between them was palpable, even to the most casual observer, betraying the carefully constructed image of a fairy tale union. Eleanor bristled under the Harrisons' attempts to control every aspect of their lives, and David, caught in the middle, found himself increasingly isolated and unhappy. Their grand strategic marriage was, in essence, a hollow vessel, adrift on a sea of unresolved conflicts and simmering resentments. As time wore on, the once flourishing family company, the cornerstone of the Harrisons' wealth and influence, began its inexorable decline. Their reliance on antiquated business models and their aversion to embracing technological innovation proved to be their undoing. They clung stubbornly to traditional manufacturing processes, failing to recognize the seismic shifts occurring in the global market, particularly the relentless march of digital transformation. Their management, always more focused on maintaining social status than on operational efficiency, became increasingly weak and ineffective. They made a series of disastrous investment decisions, pouring capital into failing ventures and stubbornly refusing to divest from obsolete product lines. Crucially, they utterly failed to anticipate or adapt to the fierce competition emerging from agile, technology-driven companies, among which, ironically, was Nexus Innovations, steadily and silently devouring market share. They were consistently outmaneuvered, out-innovated, and outpaced by the very forces they had dismissed as inconsequential. Their market share dwindled, their profit margins evaporated, and their once impressive balance sheets began to bleed red. The financial situation of the Harrison family business spiraled rapidly from precarious to utterly catastrophic. Years of mismanagement, short-sighted strategies, and a stubborn refusal to adapt had finally caught up with them. Debts mounted, suppliers became increasingly insistent, and the company's once sterling reputation was in tatters. They were teetering precariously on the precipice of total collapse, a once proud empire now reduced to a crumbling edifice. The sheer weight of their financial woes was suffocating, threatening to drag not just the company, but their entire personal fortune into ruin. The prestigious connections they had so carefully cultivated through David's marriage proved utterly useless in the face of such a profound business failure. Power and influence could not magically resurrect a fundamentally flawed and failing enterprise. They were desperate, casting about for any lifeline, any glimmer of hope to pull them back from the brink of total annihilation. In a last, desperate, and humiliating effort to salvage their dying enterprise, the Harrisons began a frantic search for financial salvation. They approached numerous private equity firms, major investment banks, and established tech conglomerates, pleading for either a substantial bailout or a complete acquisition of their rapidly depreciating assets. Each meeting was a testament to their desperation, their once proud demeanor replaced by a palpable air of fear and supplication. They explored every avenue, exhausted every contact, hoping against hope that some benevolent entity would swoop in and rescue them from their self-made predicament. Yet, time and again, the cold logic of business prevailed. No one was willing to throw good money after bad. Every single path, every desperate inquiry invariably led them to the same name, a name that echoed with increasing frequency through the corridors of the financial world: Nexus Innovations. Nexus Innovations, the very name whispered of cutting-edge technology, unparalleled growth, and immense financial power. It was the undisputed titan among the new generation of tech giants, a company that had seemingly materialized out of nowhere to dominate its sector. Its astonishing success and vast resources made it the sole potential savior for the Harrison family's floundering empire. They were unaware of the true architect behind this colossal enterprise, knowing only that Nexus Innovations possessed the singular financial muscle and strategic vision required to breathe life back into their ailing business. The identity of its founder, the enigmatic force driving its meteoric rise, remained a closely guarded secret within the industry, shrouded in a deliberate aura of mystery that only amplified its formidable reputation. They held on to the slim hope that this unseen, untouchable entity might extend a hand of mercy, completely oblivious to the deeply personal connection that bound them to the very foundation of this towering corporate structure. Their desperation blinded them to the incredible irony of their situation, to the true nature of the silent power they now desperately craved. The fateful meeting was meticulously arranged, set to take place in the gleaming, minimalist executive boardroom of Nexus Innovations' imposing headquarters, a towering structure of glass and steel that symbolized its meteoric ascent. Representatives from the struggling Harrison family business, including Mr. Harrison himself and a visibly tense David, were scheduled to present their case to the anonymous CEO of Nexus Innovations. I had made the calculated decision to attend this pivotal meeting, not as the CEO whom they expected to see, but as the company's founder and chairperson of the board. My intention was to maintain my hidden identity until the precise, psychologically impactful moment of revelation. I wanted to witness their desperate plight firsthand, to observe their demeanor as they pleaded for the very assistance they once deemed beneath them. As Mr. Harrison, his shoulders slumped with a weariness I had never seen, and David, looking pale and strained, were ushered into the opulent conference room, a subtle tremor ran through me. Their eyes swept across the room, taking in the sleek, modern decor, the panoramic city views, the quiet hum of advanced technology, but they did not linger on me. Perhaps it was the years that had passed, years that had sculpted me into a more mature, more confident woman, clad in a perfectly tailored business suit that exuded quiet authority. Or perhaps it was simply unfathomable for them to conceive that the unsuitable girl they had so casually discarded could ever occupy such a position of immense power. Their gazes passed over me, registering me only as another nameless executive in the vast machinery of Nexus Innovations. The air in the impeccably designed room was thick with unspoken tension, a palpable mixture of their apprehension and my own tightly controlled anticipation. They began to speak, their voices tinged with a desperate edge, outlining the grave financial predicament of their company, and articulating their fervent hope that Nexus Innovations, this powerful, faceless entity, would extend a benevolent hand and deliver them from the precipice of ruin. Their words were laced with a humiliating blend of pleading and desperate, almost abject supplication, a stark contrast to the arrogant pride they had once exuded. The air in the sophisticated boardroom, already thick with the Harrisons' desperate pleas, hung heavy with unspoken expectations. Mr. Harrison had just concluded his agonizing presentation, a thinly veiled plea for financial resuscitation, and David sat beside him, his gaze fixed on some point beyond my shoulder. Both men, once radiating an almost insufferable arrogance, now appeared visibly humbled, their voices laced with an unfamiliar tone of supplication. I let their final, strained words hang in the silence for a long, deliberate moment, allowing the full weight of their vulnerability to settle over the room. Then, I drew a deep, steadying breath, a quiet, internal affirmation of the strength I now commanded. My voice, when it finally emerged, was calm and measured, yet imbued with an unwavering clarity that cut through the tense atmosphere. "Welcome to Nexus Innovations," I began, my tone even, professional. "Perhaps you don't recall me, but we have certainly crossed paths before. My name is Katie. I am the woman you once deemed not wife material, the one you decided wasn't suitable enough to be part of your esteemed family." The reaction was immediate, visceral, and exactly as I had anticipated. Mr. Harrison's face, which had been pale with worry, drained of all remaining color, turning a ghastly shade of ashen gray. His eyes, initially wide with a flicker of confusion, dilated in a mixture of horror and dawning recognition. Mrs. Harrison, who had been sitting quietly beside him, let out a small, choked gasp, her manicured hand flying to her mouth. Her meticulously composed facade utterly crumbled, replaced by an expression of abject shock, disbelief, and overwhelming shame. It was as if a sudden, blinding flash of lightning had illuminated a hidden truth, revealing a reality they were entirely unprepared to face. David, however, was the most profoundly affected. He sat utterly frozen, as if struck by a paralyzing bolt, his body rigid and his eyes wide with a combination of profound regret and utter bewilderment. His jaw hung slightly agape, a silent testament to the sheer magnitude of his shock. Not a single word escaped his lips, no sound of protest or disbelief. Their collective silence, a heavy, suffocating blanket, spoke volumes, a cacophony of stunned realization, profound humiliation, and a dawning, terrifying understanding of the monumental error they had made. The sheer weight of their collective dismay was almost palpable, a crushing burden that descended upon them as the full implication of my presence in that chair, at the head of that table, finally registered. I didn't raise my voice, didn't resort to angry accusations or bitter recriminations. There was no need for such emotional outbursts. The situation spoke for itself, loud and clear. Instead, I recounted, with a chillingly calm and deliberate tone, the precise details of their past actions. I spoke of the insidious ways they had undermined my worth, the cutting words Mrs. Harrison had delivered about my unsuitability, the subtle yet relentless pressure Mr. Harrison had exerted. My voice remained steady as I recalled how they had systematically dismantled my relationship with David, driven by their insatiable hunger for social climbing and prestige. I reminded David, specifically, of his own complicity, of the cold, dismissive manner in which he had abandoned me without a second glance, without a single word of genuine remorse. I spoke not with malice, but with a stark, undeniable truth that resonated with the memory of my past pain. I articulated, with quiet conviction, how their entire value system revolved around superficial metrics, lineage, wealth, and societal standing, and how they had callously trampled over genuine human connection and sincere affection in their ruthless pursuit of ambition. Their ambition had not only fractured a budding love, but had utterly crushed the trust I had so freely given. I looked directly into their stunned faces, my gaze unwavering. "I am not here for revenge," I stated, my voice echoing with quiet authority. "I am here to ensure that you comprehend the magnitude of your colossal misjudgment, the profound error you made in underestimating someone based on superficial criteria." I wanted them to truly grasp the depth of their prejudice, the blindness that had led them to discard a genuine connection for the illusion of status. Mr. Harrison, his composure utterly shattered, attempted to stammer out a convoluted justification, his words tripping over themselves in a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control. Mrs. Harrison, her eyes wide and pleading, offered a series of incoherent, whispered apologies, each word lacking any discernible sincerity, mere empty sounds born of fear rather than genuine contrition. David, meanwhile, remained utterly speechless, his head bowed, unable to meet my eyes, the weight of his past actions pressing down on him with undeniable force. Their feeble attempts at damage control were utterly futile. Their words held no power, no resonance, stripped bare by the undeniable reality of the situation unfolding before them. Their once commanding presence was reduced to mere husks of their former selves, rendered utterly impotent by the sheer force of my unexpected presence. With a final decisive breath, I delivered my verdict, a pronouncement that carried the symbolic weight of years of silent struggle and ultimate triumph. My voice, still calm, yet now imbued with an undeniable finality, cut through the suffocating silence. "Therefore," I declared, my gaze sweeping across their desperate faces, "Nexus Innovations will not be investing in your company." The words were not delivered with a triumphant sneer or a vindictive tone. Rather, they were stated with the crisp, unwavering clarity of a dispassionate business decision. I continued, explaining my rationale in precise, professional terms, deliberately divorcing the decision from any personal emotion. "This decision," I articulated, my voice firm and unwavering, "is not rooted in personal sentiment or past grievances. It is based solely on a rigorous financial analysis and sound strategic business considerations." I laid out the cold, hard facts. Your company's operational models are antiquated, your management practices are critically flawed, and your overall market vision is severely lacking. You have consistently failed to adapt to the evolving technological landscape and the fierce competition from newer, more agile market players. From a purely objective standpoint, an investment in your enterprise at this juncture represents an unacceptably high risk to our shareholders and our fiduciary responsibilities. The rejection, delivered with such dispassionate professionalism, was not a cruel act of vengeance. Instead, it was a just and equitable judgment, a verdict rendered based on the very principles of logic and sound business acumen that they themselves had so arrogantly claimed to uphold. It was a stark mirror reflecting their own deficiencies, their own short-sightedness, and the profound lack of foresight that had defined their business practices. I subtly, yet unmistakably, emphasized the bitter irony of their situation. You have, through your own strategic missteps and adherence to outdated values, meticulously engineered the very predicament in which you now find yourselves. There was no need for further elaboration. The truth, laid bare with such clinical precision, was far more devastating than any emotional outburst could have been. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with the crushing weight of their shattered hopes and the undeniable finality of my words. The impact of my pronouncement was immediate and absolute. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison utterly collapsed, their bodies sagging as if the last vestiges of their strength had been siphoned away. Their faces, once contorted by desperate hope, now registered a stark, terrifying emptiness, devoid of any light. Every last glimmer of salvation had been extinguished, leaving them adrift in a sea of financial ruin. They stood there, broken figures, stripped of all the arrogance and condescension they had once so readily displayed. David, still unable to utter a single word, finally lifted his head, his eyes meeting mine. They were filled with an agonizing cocktail of profound regret, a dawning comprehension of what he had lost, and a silent, desperate plea for understanding. He took a hesitant step forward, his hand reaching out instinctively, as if to grasp at a phantom connection. "Katie," he finally managed, his voice hoarse, a mere whisper of my name. But I simply met his gaze with a calm, unyielding expression, offering a polite but firm shake of my head. There was nothing left to say, no personal bridge left to cross. I had made my decision years ago when I chose to reclaim my own life, and that door, for any personal reconciliation, was now irrevocably sealed. With a final, dismissive gesture, they turned and shuffled out of the boardroom, their shoulders slumped in utter defeat, their once proud bearing replaced by an undeniable air of abject humiliation. The door closed behind them, definitively, permanently, signaling the end of an agonizing chapter. The silence that followed their departure from the Nexus Innovations boardroom was profound, but it was not empty. It resonated with the echoes of a chapter closed, a ledger balanced. Despite the undeniable triumph, a subtle, almost melancholic ache lingered within me. It wasn't the searing pain of loss, but rather the quiet sorrow of witnessing the definitive end of a significant era in my life. It was the understanding that some scars, even those born from victory, never truly vanish. They simply fade into the landscape of who you've become, serving as permanent reminders of battles fought and lessons learned. The satisfaction of the moment was undeniable, a powerful surge of vindication, but it was tinged with the bittersweet knowledge that the innocence of youth and the simple trust I once possessed were gone forever. The emotional journey had been arduous, leaving behind indelible marks, a testament to the profound transformation I had undergone. Yet from that quiet, reflective space, a new sense of profound restoration and robust personal growth began to blossom. The journey of building Nexus Innovations into a $9 billion powerhouse had been far more than a financial success. It had been an intricate, demanding odyssey of self-discovery. Through every sleepless night, every coding marathon, every strategic decision, I had unearthed an inner fortitude I never knew I possessed. The immense challenges had chiseled away at my vulnerabilities, revealing layers of resilience, sharp intellect, and unwavering determination. I recognized that my true strength lay not in seeking external validation, but in the unwavering belief in my own capabilities. The process of creation, of bringing a complex vision to life, had instilled in me an unshakable sense of self-confidence, a deep-seated conviction in my inherent worth that no external judgment could ever diminish again. I had built an empire, yes, but more importantly, I had rebuilt myself, stronger and more authentically grounded than ever before. As my professional life flourished, so too did my personal sphere, albeit with a quiet, deliberate caution. I consciously sought out and cultivated genuine friendships with my colleagues and new business partners, individuals who valued me for my intellect, my work ethic, and the genuine person I was, rather than my societal status or accumulated wealth. These relationships were built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and authentic connection, a stark contrast to the superficiality I had once encountered. Slowly, carefully, I began to open my heart to Ethan, my steadfast, angel investor, and trusted advisor. He had stood by me during Nexus Innovations' nascent stages, seeing the potential in me when few others could, offering not just capital, but invaluable guidance and unwavering faith. Our connection deepened over time, evolving beyond mere professional collaboration. I realized that Ethan was more than just a brilliant business partner. He was a true confidant, a kind and insightful soul who saw beyond the triumphs and the scars, appreciating the true essence of who I had become. Our relationship blossomed organically, nurtured by profound mutual respect, deep understanding, and an unspoken, unconditional trust, unlike anything I had experienced before. It was a testament to the fact that true connection finds its way, quietly and beautifully, when you are finally ready to receive it. The most profound aspect of my healing journey was learning the invaluable art of self-compassion. I meticulously worked through the lingering vestiges of pain, consciously choosing to forgive myself for the moments of perceived weakness, for the naive trust I had once so freely given. It was an arduous process of introspection, confronting the ghost of my past self who had felt so utterly broken. I learned to embrace my entire history, the triumphs and the traumas, recognizing that each experience had sculpted me into the person I am today. The past was no longer a burden to drag behind me, but a foundational chapter that informed my present strength. I actively invested in my well-being, prioritizing restful sleep, nourishing my body, and rediscovering joy in personal hobbies that had long been neglected. I spent more time in nature, read books that expanded my mind, and nurtured healthy relationships that uplifted my spirit. This intentional self-care was not a luxury, but a fundamental act of reclaiming myself, solidifying my autonomy, and celebrating the incredible journey of my own resilience. Through this crucible of betrayal and self-reinvention, I gleaned some truly profound lessons about the nature of life and happiness. I learned, with an undeniable certainty, that a person's inherent worth cannot and should not ever be measured by their lineage, their inherited wealth, or their fleeting social standing. True value, I now understood, resides in one's character, their intrinsic abilities, their unwavering resilience in the face of adversity, and the positive impact they create in the world. It is built not on what you are given, but on what you build, what you overcome, and what you contribute. The intoxicating allure of material possessions and social validation pales in comparison to the quiet triumph of inner peace. The genuine essence of happiness, I realized, lies not in seeking retribution against those who inflicted pain, but in cultivating an unshakable internal freedom, a deep sense of serenity that comes from standing firmly on your own 2 feet, unbound by external opinions or past grievances. And real love, I discovered, is certainly not a commodity that can be bought, sold, or bartered for the ephemeral glow of fame or the cold calculations of ambition. Authentic love is a sacred connection, forged in mutual respect, profound understanding, and an unwavering, unconditional trust that withstands the fiercest storms. It blossoms where souls are truly seen and cherished, not where status or wealth is glorified. I carry no lingering resentment towards David or his family. The bitterness has dissolved, replaced by a sense of profound liberation. I feel light, unburdened, and utterly free from the chains of anger and hurt. My spirit, once bruised and broken, now soars with a renewed sense of purpose and a quiet, profound joy. Life, wouldn't you agree, is incredibly unpredictable? Just when you think you've lost absolutely everything, shattered beyond repair sometimes, in the very depths of that devastation, you unearth an unimaginable strength. It's a power that allows you to reconstruct something far grander, far more meaningful than what was taken from you. I truly hope my story has resonated with you, perhaps even offering a small flicker of hope or a new perspective. If it did, please consider leaving a comment below to share your thoughts. I read every single one. Don't forget to hit that like button if this resonated with you. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear a message of hope and self-empowerment. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, to truly be present with my journey. Remember always, your worth is yours and yours alone to define. Take good care.